Welcome to today's pre-show of our SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are in the beginnings of our pre-show. This is the 10 minutes before we get started. You can see we're 10 minutes before the top of the hour. If you're watching this on the replay, we'll be starting at the top of the hour, or you can hang out with us in the pre-show. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Good to see you there. I see that folks in St. Vincent have checked in to our big screen up front that shows where people are connecting from. If you would also like to put your virtual pin cushion in, you're welcome to do so at the link you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Boy, I've got a lot of stuff here. This is where we do a little bit of cleanup. Much better than it was. This was a little bit, this needed some help earlier. Now we're in relatively good shape. So we're all right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being there in the chat room. Folks checking in from everywhere. We got folks checking in from St. Vincent. I saw you in there earlier. Yep, you were in early today, Mal. Good to see you. Jumbo Kevin, good to see you from Kenya. Good to have you here. Dallas, Texas is here. South Africa's checking in. We got folks from everywhere. Thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for spending some time with us. We always have such a good time on these live streams, especially our Security Plus live stream is always fun. I think I have some pretty good questions for you today. We will see. Whenever I think I have good questions, you always seem to explain to me and show me very clearly, you got it. You don't really need complexity. You just go right through it. You cut right through it every single time. You don't need any QR codes. You simply go to the screen, the URL that's on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA, take you right there. That's all you need is that URL. Of course, you have to type in professormesser. So there is a little bit of typing. My domain name was a balancing act between what am I versus how many characters do I want to type. So we ended up going with the full name there, just to see how that would work out. I think that was the right decision. In retrospect, I think we did okay. But at the time, we were trying to figure it out. Because I had other domains I was using. I had other blogs that I had started at the time. There were different things we were trying. But that one seemed to stick, that particular one. So we just spelled it all the way out. And it worked out okay. Folks are checking in from all over. I mentioned some earlier ones. We got Houston and Charlotte, North Carolina, and Chicago. We have Delaware is here. Nigeria, Jersey is here. I'm not sure if that's the old one or the new one. We have Italy. Argentinians are checking in. Thank you, Argentina, for being here. We got folks in here from Afghanistan and Dayton, Ohio. A lot of folks all over the place. Almost seems like we have more internationally today than from the U.S. I see a lot of people putting in their virtual pin cushions. I see that North America is pretty well covered here. Got a lot of folks checking in from the east to the west. I think there's a song there somewhere, isn't there? We can make that happen. So there's a lot going on. We'll have to see how well we do in going through these extra questions. It's sometimes a challenge because CompTIA is constantly changing what's going on. They're constantly changing what style of question slightly. They don't ever do big changes, I've noticed. It's always been sort of a slow move in one direction or another, which is actually pretty good. But I don't like it when I can't understand what's going on online and I have to backtrack and then figure out, okay, we need to ask these questions in a different way. And that is actually a great thing to happen because then I feel like we're a little more in tune with the actual exam, which after all is our point with this. You know, one of the things I think it's hard to do is find good practice questions. Not just the question, but good practice answers are sometimes hard to find. And then, of course, the explanation is always a challenge. So we like to focus on that aspect of it. We're approaching 5 minutes until we get started, so we got a little bit of time. Let me check. It's hard for you to see. I'll take this off for a moment. My Cylons down here are recording. That's a video recorder. The whole stream is being recorded there, so we got that going on. Yep, those mixer looks good. The switcher looks good. Our output is fine. I'm looking at the cache numbers here for those of you familiar with our Blackmagic design streaming system. Data rates are right where we would expect. We're sending 6 gigabits per second up to YouTube, and we're only caching about 3% of the overall stream. If that number goes up, we're in trouble. So I always keep my eye on that, see how things are going. I also have things on this side that are giving me a summary of what the current status is. So I'm constantly sort of checking in with what's going on. But you, chat room, you're so good at telling me how things are going that usually you're the one giving me the heads up and make that happen. Are we on to a new exam yet, or can we take the old one still? Gosh, the 701 exam has been, the old exam retired like a year ago. Like, what was it, June of last year? So yeah, we're definitely on the new exam at this point. We got another, we've been on this exam for a year and a half. We got another 2 years of this current 701 exam. So if you are studying, if all your materials say SY0-701, you got the right one. You're in the right place. And everything we'll do today, and I'll talk about this at the beginning, everything we do today is really from SY0-701. So we'll have to make sure that happens. We have a few minutes left before we get started. Let me do one more check of what's going on. Right now, we're in this process where I'm in here all the time in this mode because we are finishing up shooting the last few extra little videos that we need for our A+ course. I realize we're not doing A+ today, but that's what I'm working on when this live stream is not happening. That's what I'm working on right now. And then we have other things behind the scenes that are going on. But most of it's sitting here and either editing the video that I shot or shooting new video. We don't have much more new video to shoot, though. We're kind of through that point. Obviously, with A+, it's not a single course. It's 2 courses at the same time. So it's a big one. And I think so far we've shot, if I count it up, close to 100, 115 videos so far, and we don't have many more left. So that's the good part. And then we've got to kind of work on what we do next. And I have a list. I got lots of fun things I want to do next. So we'll have to see how it goes. So, this is where we are. Now, why is, okay, everything looks good there. So I like connecting 10 minutes before. Sometimes I don't give myself the full 10 minutes. And that's when problems happen. Now that I'm here for the full 10 minutes, we're in good shape. We got 2 minutes to go to make that happen. Is CySa Plus on the list? You know, everything is on the list. The list is large. It's what is at the top of the list is the real issue. So that's always a challenge. And by the way, the list changes every day. There's something different. I stack them, and then the next day I think, well, maybe I'll order them differently. So it's always changing. I always mention that I never know what the new course will be until it's done. And then okay, we're going to do that course. We'll make that happen. I know that's a good point is CompTIA does have the new AI-related courses coming out. Those are courses that focus on using an aspect of AI in your normal technology day-to-day. And they've got a number of them they are releasing, and they are doing Security Plus with a little bit of an AI twist in it. I don't know if that really is going to have the right hook. I don't know if that's really going to catch people. I don't know if that's going to get the interest. Now that we've sort of realized, this AI thing was presented one thing, turns out it's something completely different, and now we have to figure out, we have to right size it. Everybody sort of jumped into it that, it's a perfect thing, and then we realize, it's far from perfect. It's not perfect at all. We have to figure that piece out. 30 seconds to go before we get started. I know everything has AI now. My paper towels have AI. If I go outside, the person cutting my grass, AI. If I have, because it's summer in Florida and I can't be out there or I will melt. So that's kind of where we're coming from that perspective. Let's get this ready to go. Let's see, now that we're at the top of the hour, let's go to our keynote. Let's look for a green light. Let's get the green light. Come on now. There we go. Green light, good. Red light, bad. I think we're in pretty good shape. That looks good. All these cameras look good. That means it's time to do a live stream. And let's do that. We'll get rid of this. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2025 Professor Messer SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And if you are here live and in person, you can interactively answer these questions along with us just to see how well you do. Of course, if you're watching this on the replay, you can continue to watch with us and you can follow along with what we're doing. It all works very well from that perspective. If you are here and you are joining us, maybe for the first time, I'd like to make you aware of how you can participate. You can simply go to the URL that you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That will give you the link to the questions that we are going to work through today. And I have a question for you. This is a question that is the only question you'll get today that we've done before. We call it our rewind question, just to see how well you remember things from previous study groups and to make sure that you can answer some of this information online by using the links that we have here. So one of the ways that you can do this is to follow the link on your screen. And here's the question. Just keep in mind, as we are going through questions and answers today, we do have our live stream with our live chat set up. Please do not answer questions in our chat room. Please do not put any hints in our chat room. Instead, I'll have you go to the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. So the question we have for you today is, a technician works directly with the data associated with a corporate application to assign rights and implement security controls. Which of the following best describes this individual? Is this a data owner, a data processor, a data custodian, a data modeler, or a data controller? And we, of course, have an answer for you on the screen that you can go with to see if you can answer what this one happens to be. Maybe you know the answer to this one already. Maybe you remember this one from a previous study group. That's entirely possible. So if you do know the answer, use this link, professormesser.com/QA, to answer the link, and we will see how well you happen to know that. We'll come back to this question in just a moment. Well, thanks for being here. We have an entire hour of Q&A set aside for you today. I also, in our second hour, open up the phone lines so that you can ask me any question you would like. I guess phone lines is what we used to do. Now we just do it all online. You can submit your question at any time using that same URL, which makes it easy. You don't have to wait. You could go directly to professormesser.com/QA and be able to submit your question, and we will look through those questions at the end of the hour. So anything that you've ever wanted to ask about technology, about computers, about certifications, about IT in general, or about anything else, you can ask that. Feel free by going to professormesser.com/QA. I'll also let you know that if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, that's something that absolutely helps us quite a bit. And you will be informed when we introduce new content to our YouTube channel. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube to subscribe. Also, don't forget about our weekly Security Plus pop quiz questions that we post to our Twitter/X. You can find that at professormesser.com/X or professormesser.com/Twitter. And we have the same questions available with a pretty picture over at Instagram, professormesser.com/Instagram. Also let you know that we will be talking about the SY0-701 exam today. This is the current version of the Security Plus exam. It was released on November the 7th of 2023, and you can see that it is retiring or planning to retire. An estimation is somewhere around May of 2027. So as we sit here in May of 2025, it's 2 years before this certification is retired. So that's quite a bit of time. So if you are here watching and waiting and studying, and all of your study materials say SY0-701, you've got the right study materials. This is a single exam that you need to pass. It's 90 minutes in duration, and you will get a maximum of 90 questions on the exam. I guess you could get fewer than 90 questions on the exam. I think most people do get fewer than 90. You need to earn a passing score of 750, and this is on an unusual scale from 100 to 900. So out of a total of, I guess, 800 points, you need 650 points. It's hard to calculate this, isn't it? I think that's by design. But that is the score that you need to earn so that you can call yourself Security Plus certified. The exam itself consists of both multiple choice questions, we've already seen one of those today, and performance-based questions, and we will see one of those in just a moment. It's different types of questions. We'll talk more about performance-based questions in just a moment, but that should be something you should be familiar with as well. Don't forget that all of our training videos are free for you to watch on YouTube. Every minute of every video, nothing is held back behind a paywall. Nothing requires any type of special registration. All you have to do is go to our YouTube channel and watch the video. That is it. And every single video, we cover every topic from the exam objectives. But if you'd like offline versions of the videos, if you'd like course notes, if you'd like practice exams and more, we have everything bundled together into our Success Bundle. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/701SB. Also let you know that we have this live event going on, and at the end of this event, I will hit the stop button, and in just a few minutes, it will be available for replay on YouTube. That's very convenient. If you would like an audio-only version, I have that available in a podcast distribution format. You'll see that that arrives a number of hours after we are done here, sometimes the next morning, and that can be automatically downloaded to your favorite podcast listening program. If you'd like to add this manually, you can go to our podcast link at professormesser.com/podcast. If you are listening on a streaming audio service like Spotify, you can simply search for Professor Messer, and you'll find all of our podcasts already there on Spotify, ready for you to listen. There's also, about a day after this event, if you go back to our YouTube channel and look at the YouTube video description of this video, you will see that there are timestamps associated with the video description. These timestamps give you a minute-by-minute breakdown of everything we're doing today. You can click on a timestamp and go directly to the information that you're looking for. We're able to do this thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching the replay. Hi, Lori. And going through and putting all of these timestamps in. So if you're in the chat room, give Lori a big thumbs up. Hit that heart and let her know that we appreciate what she is doing. You can go back years and find exactly what you need thanks to these timestamps and thanks to Lori's hard work. We also have, when we are not here, a live 24/7 chat in Discord. Our Discord server is available to anyone. You can find it at professormesser.com/Discord. There are thousands of professionals that are inside of our Discord that are studying their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other things. And there's a lot of really smart people that are just hanging out that would like to help people get better with this technology. All of these people are there. We have such a great group of folks over on our Discord. We'd love for you to join us. You can find out more at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take the exam. And if you are in the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territory, you can come to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discounted voucher. Sure, you can go to the CompTIA website and pay full price. I'm not sure why you would do that, but you could do that. Or you could come to my site where everything is already discounted. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need an extension in your browser. You don't have to know where the special page is. Everything is just already discounted. What could be easier than that? You can go to professormesser.com/vouchers to find out more about that. And if you are purchasing a voucher from our website, I'll even give you a little bit of something extra that you can't get anywhere else, and that's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I wrote with some tips and tricks on things that can help you with your study process. I even give you some tips for strategies you can use during the exam itself, and maybe that would get you a few extra points. That is all available if you purchase your voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's now go back to that question I asked earlier, which was, a technician works directly with the data associated with a corporate application to assign access rights and implement security controls. Which of the following best describes this individual? Is this a data owner, a data processor, a data custodian, a data modeler, or a data controller? Let's close the poll and see how you did with this one. About 44% of you are the plurality of you that answered data custodian, 35% said data controller, and then we drop down to 11% for owner, 9% for processor, and just 1% for the data modeler, which was one I sort of made up. That one is not in the official exam objectives, but I ran out of data people, so I had to make up something, right? So it's really a guess between our data custodian and our data controller. Well, we're talking about being able to assign rights and implement security controls. The data controller is someone who manages the purposes and means in which personal data is processed. So they're the ones sort of controlling what happens with this data, but they may not necessarily be someone who is working through the process of understanding how to process the data. That's a data processor. So we didn't, only 9% of you chose that particular option. We have data controllers, data processors associated with this. 44% of you, though, said data custodian. And a data custodian or data steward, they're sort of combined into the same thing in the world of the CompTIA exam objectives. And really, they are sort of combined into the same person in reality. They are responsible for the accuracy, the privacy, the security of these systems. So if somebody is applying labels to data, if they are making sure that all of your systems are in compliance with how you handle this data, access rights, security controls, this is what we were looking for. Is the data custodian is the person that did this, and that was the plurality of you that chose the answer. Not a majority, but we got close. 44% was pretty good. So I think a number of you remembered this from a previous study group. I think this was one from last month. And this is an important delineation between the data owner, the data processor, the data custodian, and the data controller. Make sure you know those differences when you are working through the specifics of this exam, and you will do just fine if any questions come up about any of those particular topics. So good job on our rewind question of the month. Let's now shift gears to a different kind of question. For those of you familiar with the exam, you know that at the beginning of the exam, you get a handful of questions that are not multiple choice. Multiple choice questions are like the one we just had, where there was a question and multiple choices that you could choose from. You could have chosen data owner or data processor or data custodian or data. You could have chosen any of these. But even if you didn't know the answer, with 5 different options, you had a 20% chance of getting it right, even if you guessed. That's a pretty high percentage. And on the exam, they usually give you 4 answers. The reason is because those 4 answers give you 25% chance of guessing. Well, CompTIA doesn't want you to guess. They want to present some questions to you that you cannot get right unless you really know the answers. So performance-based questions is a question that is anything but multiple choice. It could be fill in the blank. They could put you to a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. It might be a matching question. It might be one where we have to choose from pull-down menus. Maybe it's a drag and drop question. What they're doing is presenting you with a question that is specific to objectives that are directly from your exam objectives. So as I like to say, if you know the exam objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question of you. You will know the answer because you already know the information associated with the question. So I have for you today a Security Plus question. I have for you this new performance-based question, because we do a new performance-based question every month, where I have a set of firewall rules on the screen. For those of you that are on the podcast side, this is something you may want to flip over to the video when you get a chance to see this, because I'm not going to list out all of these rules, but you can see on the screen that we have 7 rules in our rule base. We have information about the remote IP address, remote port number, local port number, and protocol. And then finally, we have the disposition or the action that should occur if that particular rule matches. What I have for you are a series of questions, and I would like you to tell me, would this information be allowed or would this information be denied as it passed through this firewall? So as you are comparing the firewall rule set with all of these different objectives that we have here, I would like you to tell me what they are. Now, remember, of course, that as you are going through this, we have our link at the bottom of the screen. When you think you know the answers to these, please go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and submit your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We are now going to go through what those different scenarios are where you can tell me what they happen to be. So can you ping the web server? Based on this rule set, can you ping the web server? You tell me. Next one on our list is query the router for uptime statistics. Can you do that? Will it work? Also, by the way, keep in mind, I think I didn't give you the full question on this one, which is based on the following firewall rules. Determine the disposition of the traffic. The firewall is configured to implicitly deny. Just a little bit of extra piece of information you might need. Another thing I'd like you to tell me is, can you automatically set the time on a computer by sending traffic through this firewall? Is that allowed or is it denied? Another one is to share a Windows printer. Is it allowed or denied? You tell me. Logging into a web-based accounting application. Can we do that? Yes or no? Configure a switch from the command line. That would be useful, but is it allowed with this firewall rule base? And lastly, query a DNS server for DMARC information. So there are quite a few tasks that you need to determine if you can do based on this firewall rule set. So if you think you know the answers, submit those by going to professormesser.com/QA to tell me if you really know what they happen to be. This would be a good one to know at least the basics of networking. If you look at the Security Plus exam objectives, they tell you that you are going into this exam and you should have the basics of networking and operating systems down before attacking these exam objectives. So there is information in here that you should just already know. This is one of the things about IT certification exams that is always something you have to keep in mind, is what is the foundation that this particular exam is built on? Because as you know, the Security Plus exam does not start at ground zero. They expect you to have at least some knowledge of technology before you get into it. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't pass this exam with no knowledge of technology. It just makes it a little bit more difficult when you are going through the exam objectives. You might need a little bit of extra time to be able to get through those. You can submit your question at any time by going to professormesser.com/QA and submitting that particular answer. I'm seeing a lot of answers come in right now, so a lot of you are doing a great job at submitting what it happens to be. And all I have to know, and you just put them in order, is it allow or deny? If they are all deny, then your answer will be deny. It would be deny, 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 deny. It would be 7 denies. That probably is not the answer. Just so you're aware, it's probably not what we're shooting for in this particular example. So see how you do with this one. I think if you are ever in a situation where you are trying to find what is going on with the firewall, understanding how to read a firewall rule base, a set of security policies, whatever they call it in your firewall, that is an important skill. And so that's where this particular rule or this particular question is focusing on that rule base. So I want you to become more familiar and more comfortable with working through this. We're looking to know what the disposition is. I think some of you are telling me what rule is associated with this. I'm not looking for a rule number. I'm looking for you to tell me, what is the disposition of this traffic? Is it allowed or is it denied? You tell me. And keep in mind, by the way, also that once you submit questions, I don't think it's possible to see your submission. So remember, if you will, what you submitted, and that will be a relatively important thing as we go through the answers. Speaking of going through the answers, let's do that right now. Let's go through from the beginning to the end of this to see how I think the answer might be with this one. We will start with the very first one on our list, which is ping the web server. So the way that firewall rules work, of course, is that the very first rule on the firewall is considered first. And anything in that rule has to match all of the different tuples of the rule, all of those different variables that are there. So on rule 1, pinging the web server Would it be coming from any remote IP? Well, we know in this rule base covers all remote IPs, so we don't have to worry about that one going forward. We already know that to be the case. Remote port numbers, any port number would mean anything that we have. We also have port 53 and port 123 listed here. And we also have at the very bottom a rule that has no port numbers because the protocol is not TCP and the protocol is not UDP. The protocol is ICMP. And that is an important thing to keep in mind too, because ICMP doesn't have port numbers associated with it. So another one to consider as you are going through the specifics of this. Pinging the web server, a ping, it's important to know, it's not a TCP protocol. It's not a UDP protocol. It is ICMP, the Internet Control Message Protocol. So ICMP, as you can see in this rule base, our pinging the web server doesn't match rule 1 because that's TCP. Doesn't match rule 2, that's TCP. Doesn't match rule 3. It's not matching any of these rules, but when you get to rule 7 says anything that's incoming that is the ICMP protocol, denied, which means if you're pinging a web server that's using ICMP, that traffic will be denied by the firewall. So that is the process we go through for evaluating each one of these. And that's why it's also important to know, how does the description of this traffic match the description in the firewall? We need to find those. Let's do the next one. We want to query the router for uptime statistics. I think if you're querying a router for that type of metric, you're most likely using SNMP. SNMP using a UDP protocol 161. I guess if it was a trap, it would be 162, right? So let's go through our firewall. Does it match rule 1? That's port 22, so that's not going to match our UDP 161. In fact, that next rule is TCP 80. That doesn't match. The next rule is TCP 443. That does not match. The TCP 3389 doesn't match. Finally, a UDP protocol, but it's UDP port 53. That's not SNMP. That's not port 161. We have another UDP, port 123, also not port 161. So far, we don't have a match. And then the last one is rule number 7, the remote IP. That's ICMP. Also does not match. So we went all the way through the rule base, and none of those rules matched. Well, what happens now with this firewall? Well, you have to know what the default rule is for the firewall. What does this particular firewall do when nothing matches the rule base? And as I said in the question, this firewall is configured to implicitly deny. So we've gone through the explicit rules that we have typed in, but if it doesn't match any of those, there's an invisible rule at the bottom, if you think about it. An invisible rule that says deny everything. So if it doesn't match, it's denied. And in this case, querying the router for uptime statistics does not match, so it is denied. Let's do another one. Next on our list, automatically set the time on a computer. Setting the time on a computer, it's useful to know, uses the NTP protocol, the network time protocol. I guess I was redundant. Network time protocol, we also have to know that NTP, also a UDP protocol, and it uses port number 123. That's a pretty good one to know. Port 123. So if we go through our rule base, we can see port 22 TCP, it's not going to match. TCP, not going to match. TCP, not going to match. TCP, not going to match. There's a UDP. Is it 123? It's not. It's 53. Oh, wait, here is a UDP. This is from any IP address that is using port 123 to any local port over protocol. UDP is allowed. Therefore, this one is allowed as well. So there is where we go through this process to figure out. We have to look at every rule in the firewall to figure this out. Now, we only have 7 rules on this firewall. When you get into a corporate environment, there may be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rules in the firewall. But I will tell you, this is sort of an aside. It has nothing to do with the exam. And you certainly don't need to know this for your certification exam. But most firewalls will have a test feature that you can use either in the graphical front end or at the command line, where you can put this information in that says, oh, this is a UDP port 123. Would it pass through the firewall? And it will tell you if it would be allowed or if it would be denied and which rule of the firewall blocks that particular traffic. So in reality, doing this on the firewall is so much easier. It just does it for you automatically. That's another good one that you should know. Next on our list is to share a Windows printer. Sharing a Windows printer is SMB, the server message block protocol. That's a TCP protocol using port 445. Well, we already know, based on our knowledge of this rule base, that we have a lot of TCP. We have a TCP 443, but being close is not going to work. The firewall must know the exact port number that would be allowed. So we don't have port 445 on here. So that takes us down to our implicit deny. Therefore, that would be denied. Lastly, or not lastly, we have more here, logging into a web-based accounting application. In this case, the accounting application part is not important to know. But logging in at least to this particular configuration, that's important to know. And if you log in and you are using a web-based front end, then you're probably using either port 80 or port 443. And if we go to our list of protocols, port 80, TCP port 80 is allowed, and TCP port 443 is allowed. So if we are using a web-based application, we're going to say that that is allowed. I'll bet it's running over 443. It's probably rule number 3 that is allowing that traffic to pass through the firewall. Next on our list is to configure a switch from the command line. Some of you may have done this before using SSH. And as you're probably aware, SSH uses TCP port 22. 2 and 2. So port 22 is an important one to know because the very first rule on our list is anything that is using port 22 TCP, denied. You are not allowed to configure a firewall, switch, router, or anything else at the command line using SSH passing through this firewall. And then lastly, we have query a DNS server for DMARC information. This is another case where there's just too much information that we give here. Really, it's just query a DNS server. What you are querying on that DNS server doesn't matter. The firewall isn't looking at that level of detail, or at least this firewall is not looking at that level of detail. Querying a DNS server is using the DNS protocol, and so it's going to use UDP port 53. Do we have a rule for UDP port 53? We do. Is rule number 5. You can see the remote port is 53, local port any, which means your protocol is UDP allow. So we're going to say that is allowed. Now, I know on the Security Plus exam objectives, they do not explicitly give you a list of port numbers. And that is because they already assume, and they tell you this in the exam objectives, that you already have knowledge of a lot of technologies, including things like the most basic port numbers. And I would think if you were studying for an exam like this, this is probably the type of port numbers you should know. Things like DNS, things like web traffic, SSH, those types of things are really useful. So if you are planning to get into the world of security, firewalls are fascinating these days. They are remarkable technologies that go well beyond port numbers these days. And it's something that if you become very proficient at managing the complexities of our modern next generation firewalls, you will do very well in the world of IT security. So hopefully you got that right. In this case, pinging the web server was denied. Querying the router for uptime statistics was denied. Setting the time on the computer is allowed. Sharing a Windows server, denied. Logging into a web-based accounting application is allowed. Configuring a switch from the command line is denied. And querying a DNS server for DMARC information is allowed. So hopefully that's given you some perspective on things that might help you a bit for your exam. And maybe this gives you some ideas about thinking how security is implemented in some of these larger networks. So hopefully you did pretty well on that. We had such a good showing with that question that I think we should roll right into the next multiple choice question. So here is your next multiple choice question. We're now going to move to this that asks, an outage report includes this information. And for those of you that are watching this, you can see that it is a lot of text that's on the screen. It starts with Internet Protocol version 6, There's a bunch of bits here that say version 6 and traffic class information. It shows me the payload length. The next header is TCP. It shows me a hop limit of 64, shows me an IPv6 source address and an IPv6 destination address. And it shows me that this is transmission control protocol, source port 49155, destination port 49162, sequence number 1, acknowledgement 1, length 0. And the question is, which of the following is the most likely source of this information? Is it a packet capture? Is it email metadata? Is it router logs? Is it a vulnerability scan? Or is it an application log? If you think you know this answer, you can answer with the link that is on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. That's where you want to go. If you want to see that again, let me bring you back to the image of this so you can really see what it happens to be. There it is, that outage report showing the information on your screen. It's useful to know the output of all of these different techniques and topologies and utilities and commands and all of the things you might run into, because you may be handed a report and instantly you're going to want to know, where did this information come from? How did this report come about to have this happen? So again, which of the following is the most likely source of this information? Is it packet capture, email metadata, router logs, vulnerability scan, or application log? You can submit your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. We will figure it out from there. A lot of people submitting their answers. Let's see how you did. The outage report includes all of that great information you saw on the screen. There's the copy of it. Did not know I could just click on it and zoom it out. There we go. Which of the following is the most likely source of this information? Is it packet capture, email metadata, router logs, vulnerability scan, or application log? And how do we do? We did great. 64% of you say the answer is packet capture. 23% of you say that's a router log. And then it's single digits from there, almost a three-way tie for last place between email metadata at 5%, application log at 5%, and vulnerability scan at 3%. What I find interesting about this question, by the way, is that the question itself could potentially be one of three of these answers. But I asked you specifically what the most likely source of this information happens to be. And if you've done anything with packet captures, you've pulled out your Wireshark, you've grabbed information and had a look at what's going on across the network, then you're probably very familiar with this type of output and the detail in that output. That output told us about detailed MAC address information, detailed IP address information, details about port numbers, details about TCP bits that were turned on and turned off. The only way you're going to see those is with some type of packet capture utility or a third-party packet capture application like the one you see here with Wireshark. You can't really see it very well on the screen, but you can kind of see the output from the detail view of Wireshark. That is exactly where I got the detail that was here. I simply did a packet capture on my local network, grabbed an IP header and a TCP header in that detail view and added it to this question so we could really see where this information would come from. So if you answered packet capture, spot on, got it absolutely right. That's the answer to the question we were looking for. Now, why would this not have been router logs? 23% of you said a router log is what you would choose. In this particular case, router logs provide information about really IP level information and information about the internal workings of a router. But the information that we have here was not router information. It was an IP header with all the information you would expect to see and a summary of a TCP header. So there's really no routing information in this view. One of the things I mentioned earlier, however, was that many routers are able to take packet captures. Many application logs might include a packet capture. Sometimes a vulnerability scan can include a packet capture. So really, there are four possible answers here for this question. By the way, email metadata, this looks nothing like email metadata, so we can throw that one out. Email metadata commonly shows us where the email started, what server it went from, what server it went to, and there's a lot of security details in there regarding DKIM, regarding DMARC verification. There's other information in the header. It is a fascinating language to have to decipher, but in this case, it is not metadata relating to email. In this case, it is a packet capture. That is the most likely source of this, but there are sometimes you'll find router logs that are telling us an interface went up, an interface went down, but you might be able to capture packets on your router front end, and it might be in the logs of that router. So that's another thing that it could be, but probably not the most likely source. It's very unusual to perform a packet capture on a router unless you're performing some type of troubleshooting. So that's why it would not be the most likely in this scenario. Would not really be a vulnerability scan. There were no vulnerabilities listed on that output. Sometimes a vulnerability scan will identify a vulnerability and it will include the packets associated with its resolution. That's not what we were seeing here either. We've got application log data. In this case, there was no application data in that, so probably wasn't an application log. All we saw was IP header details and a TCP header summary. There wasn't much more in there to be able to pull from. So that's why I would not choose any of these other options. I would indeed choose what 64% of you chose, packet capture. That's the answer we were looking for. Those are the numbers we wanted. And if you were capturing a packet, you yourself should be able to go into the detail of the packet and determine exactly what's going on across the network. As I've mentioned many times, having a skill set with packet captures will put you at the upper echelon of people able to troubleshoot network problems, application problems, and anything in between. This is one of the good reasons why whenever you're fighting a problem with an app or you're fighting an issue with a network device, the first thing that the support team asks for are packet captures. So knowing how to take the packet capture is good. Knowing how to read the packet capture, even better. Just another thing you can think about as you work through that. So those are our answers. Let's now shift gears to another question. You guys did so well with that one. Let's see how you do with this one. Next on our list is a company's core router has failed and management has asked the networking team when the router will be fixed. We've been there. Which of the following would best describe this request? Would that be MTBF, MOU, MTU, MTTR, or MSP? There's a lot of abbreviations here, and all of these abbreviations are real things. All of them come from the exam objectives. Just makes it a little bit harder. The question asks, a company's core router has failed, and management keeps bugging us about when the router will be fixed. That's how it always works. They're coming in the door every 5 minutes. Is it up yet? Are we fixed yet? Are we running yet? I need to tell everybody else. Are we going to... That's what they're asking for. How long is this going to take? So which of the following would best describe this request? Is it MTBF, MOU, MTU, MTTR, or MSP? I guess if I start looking at the details of this, you would have a pretty good idea. And being able to figure out exactly where we're going with this particular problem. Let's see if you know. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to answer your question. Let's see how you do with this one. A lot of people have submitted their answer already, so let's see how you did. We'll go through this list. It asks, a company's core router has failed, and management has asked the networking team, when will the router be fixed? Which of the following would best describe this request? Would it be MTBF, MOU, MTU, MTTR, or MSP? Let's see how we did. I'm going to stop our poll. We'll get rid of that at the bottom. Oh, 79%, a very strong number. It's not just a majority, it's a strong majority, is MTTR. That's what most of you chose. Everything else is single digits. 8% said MTBF, 5% said MOU, 5% said MTU, and 4% said MSP. So that's what we were sort of focusing on as we were looking at this question. Now we have to decipher all of these abbreviations. And by the way, this is a very common way for CompTIA to integrate these acronyms into the exam itself. And this is why. This is exactly what we'll deal with. So let's talk about this. This comes from my video which is in section 5.2 under business impact analysis. And if you are looking at the details of this, you'll know that MTTR means a mean time to repair. This is on average. Technically, mean is not an average, but for the rest of us in the world who are not statisticians, a mean is absolutely an average. It is the average time to repair. I look forward to your cards and letters. If somebody is asking, how long is it, if this fails, if this firewall fails, if this router fails, if this power supply fails, what is the mean time to repair it? That's an important consideration, especially when you're trying to decide if you want to spend a little bit extra money, maybe to keep another unit on site. Maybe currently, if our firewall fails, we will be down for 12 hours because we have to order another one and have it shipped in. So on average, it will take 12 hours. But if we have a firewall on site, it will take 30 minutes for us to be up and running. Or we could put it in real time. We could have it running already in an active passive state, and you'll have zero downtime. But of course, having a separate firewall or a separate router or a separate switch, that redundant system, costs money. So how much money would we be willing to have zero downtime instead of 12 hours of downtime? And now you have to make a business decision. That's what this statistic is all about, is being able to make those business decisions. We don't often think of our role in IT as being one about money, but every role in the company is about money. It's either about saving money or making money. And this is a really good example of how we can use real numbers to make a business decision about spending money wisely. So absolutely the way you should go through this and focus on it. If you answered MTBF, 8% of you chose that option. That is the mean time between failures. So on average, how long does it take between this failure and the next failure that's coming down the line for that particular firewall? That was not the problem we had with this question. With this question, the firewall was already down. The core router in this case was already down. And they were asking, when is this going to be fixed? So in that case, it's the MTTR and not the MTBF. We had other abbreviations on here as well. I had 5% of you answered an MOU. If you are someone who is a memorandum, all of these memorandums of non-disclosure agreements, memorandums of the partnership memorandums, the memorandums of doing some type of professional services where you have a statement of work, those are all things you need to know as well. So if you're getting into things like understanding the contracts that you're going to be dealing with, those are the types of metrics you're going to really want to focus on. MTU focuses more on the network side. Not really a security abbreviation, is it? It's more of that networking side with a maximum transmission unit, and an MSP, managed service provider, is one of the abbreviations associated with that. In this case, it was really, we were trying to decide if it was the MTBF or it was the MTTR. And in this case, by far, the MTTR, the 79% of you, spot on, got it absolutely right. Well done. That was the answer that we were indeed looking for. This is kind of a challenge. If you look at the exam objectives themselves, there is a ton of information in the Security Plus exam objectives. And if you look at our course, it's 121 videos. There's over 15 hours of video in our course. That's a lot of information to pour through. And although I recommend you go through all 121 videos, that's not always possible. So I always tell people, maybe you want to grab my course notes. This is a 96-page overview that shows you all of the important information that comes from my videos. I have a copy of my course notes right here. Let me show this to you. There it is. Here's my course notes. The 701 course notes, this is the PDF version of the course notes. So in practical terms, this is identical to the physical version of the course notes. I'll show it here. It's here at the bottom of the screen. So the information we see on the screen here, you can see there's some graphics on the screen. So let me go to that page, and you can see in the book exactly the same graphics. It's the same information, just in a perfect bound well-documented 96-page book that I can ship to you. If you purchase the physical edition, that's what we call this, you get the digital edition that you see on your screen for free, and you can download that immediately. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered, you can pull this up right away. Now, if you're purchasing the digital edition, you get access to it right away. You can download it directly from your member login. This is a lot of great information in here. So if you're looking for that bit of text that was in a video, if you need a summary of that graphic, you need to know more about the key exchange process, it's in the course notes. This is where you can go to really see everything you need to know in one place. And of course, it doesn't replace watching the videos. It doesn't replace you reading a book. It doesn't replace you going through labs, but it does give you a summary of all the information you need to know in one place. And that can sometimes be a great study guide, especially later on in the later stages of your studying process, or follow along as we go through the video. They're in exactly the same order as our videos that are on our YouTube channel and our website. If you want to know more about that, they're on my website, professormesser.com/701cn, or simply follow the links from the main menu on the Professor Messer website. Let's do another question, shall we? I'm talking way too much today, so I'm going to try to speed things up a bit. Next on our list is this question that asks, which of the following would best describe the last A in the AAA framework? Oh, this is another one where we not just need to know the abbreviation, we need to know how to apply this acronym. So which of the following would best describe the last A in the AAA framework? Would it be a user logs in with a username, password, and random token value? Is it that all visitors connect to a guest VLAN? Is it that users are required to create a password 10 characters or longer? Is it that members of the executive team are assigned a more relaxed QoS policy? Or is it that login durations are shown in a report? Wow, there's a lot going on there. In fact, if you want a little bit of extra credit on this one, find out which one best describes the last A in the AAA framework, and then go through the other 4 answers and tell me which A they are associated with in the AAA framework. I think it works out that way, if I recall. I write these questions. Sometimes these questions are a month old. Sometimes they're a week old. So sometimes I don't remember what I wrote with the question until it comes up. So hopefully you're familiar with this. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, go to this link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. A lot of you know this one, I think. I think a lot of this would be something good that you can go through. Let's see how well you do with this one. I think we can kind of jump right to the answer at this point. Let's see how you did. Which of the following would best describe the last A in the AAA framework? Would it be that a user logs in with a username, password, and random token value? Is it that all visitors connect to a guest VLAN? Is it that users are required to create a password 10 characters or longer? Is it that members of the executive team are assigned a more relaxed QoS policy? Or is it that login durations are shown in a report? What did you choose? I'm wondering. Let's close our poll and find out. And we'll see 66% of you say login durations are shown in a report. 23%, a pretty strong number, say that a user logs in with a username, a password, and a random token value. And then we have single digits, practically a tie for third place, which is users are required to create a password that is 10 characters or longer. That was 5%. 4% of you say that the answer is members of the executive team are assigned a more relaxed Q&A policy. And then you have the last one, all visitors connect to a guest VLAN. Only 3% of you deal with that one. Maybe the answer, 66% of you, login duration shown in a report. Well, I guess it would be good to know what this is, this AAA framework. You know, whenever you log into a network, you are providing some information that is relatively public and some mostly information that is secret. It's a private. And this is so that we can properly authenticate you to this network or to this system. So the first thing that we're going to provide is some type of identification. And generally, identification is not something secret. We know who you are. We know your username. And usernames and email addresses are not commonly a secret or private thing. So we can just consider that identification. It's not really part of the AAA framework, at least not at a specific level, but it does fit into parts of the AAA framework, especially the first A. First A in the AAA framework is authentication. I want you to prove that you are who you say you are. But how do we do that? Well, most of the time it's just a password. Only you know the password, right? So if only you know the password and you put this password in and I check and my password matches your password, you must be the right person. Obviously, that's not really great security these days, but it gets us to a certain level. Authentication, perhaps we add other authentication factors to this. Maybe we add a factor where you are putting in an ID card. There's a certificate on that card. That's an authentication factor. Maybe you're putting in a personal identification number. Maybe you're given a random token value, and that random token value is an additional authentication factor. That fits into the section, the first A for authentication. So when we talk about authenticating to the network, logging in with a username, password, or random token value, that's the first A. We have users required to create a password 10 characters or longer. It's part of the password. I'd fit that into the first A as well. There's some other things we can talk about regarding that, but that kind of gives you some insight into how I think about this question anyway. The next A on the list is authorization. Once we've proven that you are who you say you are, what do you have access to? Do you have access to the employee database that shows everything about their personal information, including their salary? Probably not. Do you have access to a mailing list that you are responsible for maintaining? Probably so. So there are differences in what you get access to once you authenticate, and authorization is a good part of that. If we go back to our list, I would say that users connecting to a guest VLAN, you've been put into the guest VLAN. We have not only authenticated you as a guest, we are providing you with the authorization that exists in this particular VLAN. And that VLAN is generally, a guest VLAN is very restricted. So that's a good example of restricting someone's authorization. We also have members of the executive team assign a more relaxed QoS policy. I'd fit that into the authorization section as well. I think that fits very well into providing someone with a level of access once we know who they are. The last A then is the one that we asked about in this question. What would best describe the last A in the AAA framework? The last A is kind of an odd name, accounting. I think they kind of shoehorned in the name accounting, don't you? So I think that should be logging, but AAL doesn't quite have the same panache, the same style about it. So accounting is what we have. Accounting is how you keep track and log the information associated with the authorization and the authentication. So working backwards there. So I think if you were someone who wants to know, when did someone log in? When was there an attempted login? Did they get the authorization correct or authentication correct? And did we give them the proper authentication? That is an important consideration of this. And if you are someone who is really looking at log information, all of this log information comes from this last A, the accounting part of the framework. Obviously, there's only one answer left in here, and it shows that login durations are shown in a report. The only way we would have those login durations shown in a report is from that accounting. That is the last A in the AAA framework. 66% of you say that is the right answer, and 66% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. That was the answer that we were looking for. Now, if you are watching this live stream or you're watching it on demand and you would like to get 1 hour of a webinar category CEU, that's a continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email with that information. But you have to do something first to earn that CEU. First thing you have to do is watch this video. And by watching this video, you now know that the process is that you go to the Professor Messer website. At the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, you click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put May 2025 Security Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month: authentication, authorization, accounting. Those are your super secret code words of the month: authentication, authorization. Oh, now you got the next question, and accounting. So those are the three we're looking for in that email. That's all you have to send. If you want to add other information into that, you can absolutely do that. You can put anything else. I read through every single one of these messages that comes through, and I validate each one of them. So I also read anything else you happen to put in there as well, which is always kind of fun. I'm not always able to respond back to these because we get hundreds of these every month, but I do like to read through them, and I do read through every single one, just so you're aware. So those, again, here is the process. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click Contact Us. In the resulting form, you put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put May 2025 Security Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month: authentication, authorization, and accounting. And that will get you an email in about a week. As many of you know that sent me a CEU request Thursday of last week, you still have not gotten your CEU yet. I still say I have another day, but I probably will process these at the end of today. So anything you get in now, you might be able to get it back in quite less than a week. Because sometimes me being behind helps you a little bit more for those of you that are doing this currently. So let's now, you probably have already seen, we have time for more questions. Let's get another question in here. You probably recall seeing this pop up for just a moment on your screen. This is another one that shows some output from an attack. And I want you to tell me this scenario. It says an attacker has used this information to attack a website. And you can see there is a get command here. Get http://www.example.com/show.asp ? View equals ... /windows/system.ini HTTP 1.1. That's a lot to go through. So I kind of spelled that out for the folks that are on the podcast side. My question about this is, which of the following would best describe this attack type? Let's see if we know what that is. Is it an on-path attack, a directory traversal? Is it XSS? Is it privilege escalation? Or is it code injection? We have a few to choose from here. So an attacker has used this information to attack a website. And you can see all of the information we provided before that I previously spelled out for you. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Is it on-path attack, directory traversal, XSS, privilege escalation, or code injection? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this happens to be. I think this might be pretty good to focus in on different attack types. You obviously need to know all of these attack types for the Security Plus exam. I pulled all of them from the exam objectives, but only one applies to this particular question. So we will see what you think the answer might be. Submit your answer at any time. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. A number of you have already locked in your answer. So let's go through what you think the answer is. An attacker has used this information to attack a website. There's a get command. It has a question mark, view equals ... /windows/system.ini, and then an HTTP 1.1 at the bottom. So this could be an on-path attack. It could be a directory traversal. It could be XSS. It could be privilege escalation. It could be code injection. Which one could it be? Let's see what you answered. We will close our poll and see what the answer is. And 51%, well, it's close enough to majority for me. It's 1% over, so we'll take it. Say the answer is directory traversal. But 20% of you say the answer is XSS. That is cross-site scripting. 17% say the answer is code injection. And then we have 9% that say on-path attack, and 2% say privilege escalation. The real key with this particular question, I'm going to go back to my single screen here just to show you this. The real key with this one is everything here looks normal. This is a normal get command. It lists a URL, although it's in HTTP and not HTTPS. we can still work with that. It is a show.asp. That's perfectly normal, but it's this part that looks a little bit weird. Having a dot dot slash, if you've ever done this at the command line of your Windows or Linux system, then you are already familiar with being able to go back one directory using the two dots. That means not the directory we're on, but the previous directory. And if we start putting more of those, we're going not our current directory, but the previous directory, and then the previous directory before that, and then finally working through a separate set of parameters here, especially if we're going through the file system itself. If you see that, it is very much likely, it is almost absolutely 100% a directory traversal or path traversal issue. This is exactly what somebody's doing, is trying to manipulate your system in the hopes that it is misconfigured to allow it access to parts of the file system that normally it should not have access to. And somebody gaining access to your Windows directory, that's a very bad level of access. Just a random person on your website, that is not what we would want. So in this particular case, directory traversal is exactly what that is. In fact, if you go to this video that is in section 2.4, the video name is Application Attacks, I give you that very string. So you can see what type of string is commonly seen when you look at that particular piece of information. That is a directory traversal, and it's the dot dot slash dot dot slash. Anytime you see a dot dot slash in a URL, almost always directory traversal. That's what somebody's trying to do in this particular case. I could have pulled that one right off of my website because I see practically every possible attack type. Hit professormesser.com. I got plenty of information in my logs that would show you someone trying to attack different parts of my site, what they're looking for. It's just the normal part of being on the internet these days. So anyone's able to do that. You put up your own website, you will absolutely see people attacking your website. It's just a normal part of the internet. There's just an underlying bit of noise that's very much associated with that. So that's where it came from. I don't have anxiety because I have designed my website personally. I have experience working in the cybersecurity industry. I have many different layers of security. And whenever I see people trying to attack different aspects, I've already turned that part off. So they're trying to attack something that is now locked. They will never get in as much as they try. They try to brute force the root password. They try to brute force user passwords all the time. Well, you can't log in with a user password. So they're really going through this process and trying it, not knowing that they will never succeed, which I just delight in myself. I love that. I love watching that and seeing what's going on with it. So that's the answer we were looking for. If you answered the directory traversal, that is the answer we were looking for. 51% of you got that right. 20% of you said a cross-site scripting. Well, in this particular case, that URL that's there is really only to a single site. And it wasn't anything there. It says we've used this information to attack a website, but it's only a GET command. And it's not one that talks about discovering this in an email, clicking a link that is somewhere else, or someone embedding this on a website somewhere else. That's not what we have. And having the two dots and a slash really is a directory traversal. You wouldn't use directory traversal very much unless you were trying to get access to that Windows directory. Makes perfect sense. We have 17% said code injection, but we're not really injecting code here. This is whenever you see a URL with the question mark after it, everything after the question mark is a series of variables that you are sending along with the request that you're making. So you will see them separated by ampersands if there's more than one variable. You've probably seen this in a URL, these really long URLs, except it has an ampersand and then more information, another ampersand and more variables. That's what that is. So if we were doing that, it might be code injection, but in this case, we're not. It's simply asking for a view variable that has this directory traversal built into it. We have 9% that said an on-path attack. That meant that someone was in the middle of our conversation and perhaps either viewing or manipulating the information that was being sent back and forth. There's nothing in this question that seems to indicate that there's a third party that is in the middle of the conversation. So would probably say not an on-path attack. Although for you people that know, this is an HTTP request, which means it's in the clear. It certainly is susceptible to an on-path attack, but nothing about this question talks anything about having an on-path or a man-in-the-middle type on-path attack. And then lastly, we have privilege escalation. That means that somebody is running or wants to run this as root, as administrator, or as an elevated account access. And in this case, there is no elevated account access. We're simply doing a get command, so it would not be privilege escalation. The answer here that would best describe this attack type is the one that 51% of you chose. The directory traversal is what you chose, and that is the right answer. That's what we were looking for. Well done. Well, I know that we're now past the top of the hour. That happened very quick, but I want to get one more question in to be able to work through the details of this. And this next question is not one that I created just for this study group. This next question is one from my practice exams book. If you've ever been out on the internet and looked for practice exams, you're probably not going to be very happy because there's not a lot of great quality practice exams on the internet. When I saw that, I thought somebody should make practice exams that were actually good, that emulated the same style as the real exam, that had a similar tone as the actual exam, perhaps had similar complexity of what you would find during the exam, but it needed to be an independent type of question that was written outside the scope of the actual exam. So I sat down and I wrote some. I wrote a whole book of them, 3 separate practice exams. You can get this in either a digital form or a physical form. This practice exam book has 3 separate practice exams. There are 90 questions in each exam with 85 multiple choice questions and 5 performance-based questions in each one of the practice exams. So for 3 total. Now I have for you a question from my practice exam. Let's see if I can show you the question I picked for today's study group. This comes from page 268 on my practice exam. This is practice exam C. So this is the 3rd practice exam in my list. And this question asks, again, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. The question asks, the contract of a long-term temporary employee is ending. Which of these would be the most important part of the offboarding process? Would it be perform an on-demand audit of the user's privileges, archive the decryption keys associated with the user account, document the user's outstanding tasks, or obtain a signed copy of the acceptable use policies? These are the possible answers. Now, this is a PDF, so if most PDFs have some type of annotation feature in them, and you can highlight different things. You can have a look, in fact, if you have a stylus, you can write on the screen. This is an open PDF. You can do anything you'd like with this PDF. I don't like using PDFs that don't allow you to make changes or write on it or save information. There's a lot that you can go through here. Another part of this practice exam that makes it very different than other practice exams is that you have quick links that take you to the answer page. So we're on page, as I mentioned, page 268. If you just wanted the answer, is it A, B, C, or D, you can go to page 289. But if you wanted a detailed description of this question, you can go to page 323. Well, if you're on page 268, you know a PDF, you've got to scroll just to get to page 323, but it's okay. I've made links for you in the PDF, so all you have to do is click the word the details. Click, and it takes you all the way to page 233 or whatever it was. And you can see it gives you the information at the top, which is the question that we just went through. And it tells you the answer is B, archive the decryption keys associated with the user account. And I tell you why I believe that to be the right answer. Now, the problem with the practice exams that I have found is that if you get it wrong, it doesn't fill in the gaps and tell you why did you get it wrong. And that's when you really learn things, is when something goes wrong, you get a question incorrect, you're troubleshooting, something is broken and you're troubleshooting. That's when you really learn what's going on. So in my practice exams book, every single incorrect answer is fully documented. So if you answered A, perform an on-demand audit of the user privileges, I tell you why that's the wrong answer. So in a way, you are able to go through this And you have really 4 separate answers, 4 different topics that you're learning about. I will also recommend, if you get the question right, just read through the incorrect answers anyway, because on your exam, you might not have a question talking about archiving decryption keys. You might have a question about acceptable use policies, and you want to be able to answer that question. Well, I give you a breakdown of AUPs. In fact, here I talk about them being signed during the onboarding process, not the offboarding process. Good example of that. Now, if you went through this question and you had no idea what this stuff meant or what I was talking about, at the very bottom of this list is a link to the video that I used to create the question. So if you're trying to learn more about the nomenclature, if you're trying to understand some of the abbreviations, they're all in this video. And you can simply watch the video and then come back to the question. Also, because this is a PDF, I've now finished with this particular question. There's a back button. I don't know if you realize most PDF readers have a back button in them. I'm going to click the back button and it takes me back to where I started. You see that? So I was at the details. I just clicked back and it took me right back to page 268. And then I can go through the next question that's in the list. That is my practice exams book. So hopefully this gives you some feel for the style and the tone of the information in the practice exams. I think this is a great tool to use as you're finishing up all of your studies to give you an idea on if you're really ready to take your exam. We have, of course, the digital PDF and the physical edition as well. And if you buy both the practice exams and the course notes together, you get a little bit of discount. So that's always good too. You can find out more about this on my website, professormesser.com/securitype. All the questions we had today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, which, by the way, are free if you have not downloaded them already. It is a valuable tool. It tells you everything you need to know for the exam. I have a copy of the objectives right here. So they give you a bullet-by-bullet breakdown of everything you need to know for the exam. And this is the best document for determining how do I start my studies. This is also the best document for trying to determine, am I ready to take the exam? It's the exam objectives. They're available on the CompTIA website. You can go to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll be the first link. Or if you want a more streamlined version, you can go to professormesser.com/objectives, and that will take you right there as well. I have a link that takes you right over to the CompTIA website. That is such a good tool to use, especially in your last week of studies. It can really highlight the things that you might have missed the first time through. You can circle all of those, and now you know exactly what topics to study up on before you go into that exam. Well, I know that we do a lot of live streams during the month. We do one Security Plus study group during the month. This is the one for May, and I've already scheduled the ones for June. The next one is on June the 25th. Of course, we have our A Plus study groups on the 10th and 12th of June. Currently, our Network Plus study group is scheduled for the 18th, and you should probably come back for the 25th. We'll have another one of these with all new questions. We do new questions every time, so you know you're going to see something new on every study group. Of course, all of these are archived on our website. You can watch the replays of all of them going back to the very beginnings of our 701 study groups. Might help you a little bit if you're planning to study for your Security Plus exam. Well, we have gone through an hour of content, but don't worry, there's more to come. We have our after show. Hopefully, you have submitted your questions. If you haven't, you can submit them at any time by going to professormesser.com/QA and using that tab at the top of the screen to submit those questions. Don't forget about following us on your favorite social media site, whether that's Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it, or Instagram or YouTube. Just type in professormesser.com/ the name of that. If you want to help us a lot with this video, feel free to have a look at our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. You might want to consider subscribing or at least giving us a thumbs up. That might help us quite a bit if you're someone working through your studies. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. You might be able to save a few bucks when you're ready to take your Security Plus exam. And of course, our course notes, practice exams, and so much more are on our website at professormesser.com/701SB. If you like this video, please consider giving us a thumbs up. It really does help us quite a bit. And it's something, as I talk to my YouTube representative, I think I'm meeting with them next week, I'm sure they'll bring up how many people like the videos that you are creating. Hopefully, they'll see good numbers there. I think they will. Well, Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour. Stick around for the after show. We'd love to have you join us. I'd love to answer your questions in that second hour. Thanks for joining us in this first hour. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, I'm going to get a sip out of this. Oh, that's so much better. Now I need to bring myself up on the screen. That's not how this works. This is how it works, and that's how it works. There we go. So now it's time for the after show. We can put that up. We don't have to get rid of that. The after show is a more casual, more laid-back version of our study group, mostly because I don't plan at all for the second hour. The first hour, there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of work that goes into that first hour. But in the second hour, there's no work done. There's nothing. There's some work done, but not a lot. In the second hour, we go through the process of answering questions that you have. We're sort of turning this around. You answer questions that I have. Now it's time for me to answer questions that you have. If you would like to submit questions for the second hour, we would love for you to do that. Simply go to that same link, professormesser.com. It will go into a big list on my side, and then I will parse through that list to see what questions you might have for me. Simply go through and submit those at any time with the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Let's now have a look at what you have here. This is the part where I sort of sift through the questions that you have submitted to come up with some ideas of different options that might be available. Let's start with one that's sort of an administrative question. And a good one at that. This comes up quite a bit in my email inbox. This is a question from Jacob, who asks, outside of my study groups, where do you recommend getting continuing education credits? Now, as many of you are probably aware, collecting CEUs, or continuing education credits, is just one way to renew your certification. There are multiple ways you can renew your cert. And for those of you who haven't gotten your Security Plus certification yet, you might not even realize once you become Security Plus certified, you now have 3 years of validity associated with that certification, which means sometime during that 3-year period, you have to renew the cert in order to maintain another 3 years of eligibility with your certification. So there's quite a bit that you have to parse through to make that happen, but it doesn't have to be CEUs. In fact, I think probably the more popular form of renewal is to use CertMaster CE. If you look at the YouTube video description of this video, there is a link in there on how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. And that talks a lot about CertMaster CE, but I also go through a number of different methods for renewing your certification, and I talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both. So if collecting CEUs is for you, absolutely that's what you should do. If you don't have time to do that, or it doesn't work for you, maybe CertMaster CE works. Maybe taking a third-party certification exam, maybe taking a next-level CompTIA exam is the right way to renew. Everybody has a different path. You should find the one that works for you. If you go out to the CompTIA website, we will go out there right now. Here we go. Oh, look, got an ad. There's Chris Evans studying for his certification exam. If we go to the continuing education section, they talk all about how you renew. There's 3 different steps here, sort of an introductory. Why do you need to renew? Fine question. We should figure that out first. And then how do we renew? What is the path we take? And then how do you submit CEUs if that's what you're going to do? So let's choose our renewal path. You specifically were talking to us about wanting to know about CEUs, and that would be renewing with multiple activities. You can choose to earn CEUs over an extended period by going through this continuing education. And there's different categories of CEUs. There is CompTIA certifications can give you CEUs. Non-CompTIA gives you CEUs. Training, like the ones we are doing here. Industry participation, publishing, work experience. All these things can give you CEUs. If you take a class, that may be all you need to renew your certification for another 3 years. Well, how would we do that? So the type and style of CEU you get will have a great determination of what you do on your normal day. That's kind of the important part of this. So for example, let's take an example of this. Let's do training and higher education. And you can see that you can complete a training course, attend a live webinar. Hey, that's what we're doing here. Attend a conference, complete a college course, complete an American Council on Education course. And then they tell you how many CEUs you can earn by doing one of those things. So today, you are attending a live webinar. You get a 1-hour webinar category CEU. That live webinar, if you have a Security Plus certification, that live webinar can earn you up to 10 CEUs towards the renewal of your Security Plus certification. 10. Now, as you are probably aware, you need, 50 CEUs to renew your certification. So as much as I wish you could watch 50 of these and get all the CEUs you need, you cannot. You can only watch 10 of them. So where do you get the other 40 from? You could get it from taking a training course. Look at the training course. If you have a 50-hour training course, you're done. You got 50 CEUs. Finished. If you attend a conference, you get another 10. If you complete a college course, you get 50. So there's lots of places that in your normal day, you might already be accumulating CEUs. So the question that you posed earlier is, what do I recommend that you take for these CEUs? What should you do to earn these CEUs? And I don't have a good answer for you because everybody's answer is going to be a little bit different. A number of folks, probably some folks might take training courses. They might they might still be in college. So your college course may be renewing it for you. So have a look through all of the different categories. There's a lot of them, through all of those different sections, and find the ones that fit best for you. So that's what I would recommend, is going through that process and really understanding what options might be available for your specific world, because what you choose for your CEUs may be very different than what somebody else chooses for their CEUs. Just another thing to consider. So that hopefully is giving you some ideas of where you can start with your researching to find those CEUs. That might help you quite a bit. I got a number of questions in this list of questions coming through that are asking questions about, is this on the exam? Is that on the exam? Is this topic on the exam? Should I expect this to be on my exam questions? So if you're ever in a situation where you're wondering, what is on my exam? What should I expect to see? I would highly recommend that you go back to the exam objectives. This tells you everything. Everything you need to know about the exam is in this list. And I will tell you, CompTIA stays almost 100% on these topics. They rarely, if ever, deviate from this list. To the point that you've heard me say this before, if you know every one of the bullets that is listed in this document, if you can explain the bullet to yourself or to someone else, and you have an understanding of how this technology is implemented and how it secures your network, you're ready to take your exam. And you're going to pass it, no problem. Because if you have that level of knowledge about the information that is covered in these exam objectives, you're going to just go right through every question because you know the topic associated with every question posed for you. Also, in the back of this is an acronym list. I don't necessarily think you should be spending a lot of time memorizing an acronym and what its spelled out name happens to be. Sometimes it might help you. For example, knowing that AAA is authentication, authorization, and accounting might help you with understanding what those different categories do. But there's a lot of acronyms that are in this list that are simply not used in the exam objectives. And I think as you go through the exam objectives, the acronyms that are going to be important will organically be included with your study materials. Also, on the exam, you will never get a question that asks you, what does NTFS stand for? And you somehow would need to know that stands for New Technology File System. You will never get a question that says, as I flip through this real quick, what does OID stand for? Well, that is Object Identifier. You simply will not get questions like that on your exam. One, because it's relatively unimportant. Knowing the words associated with an acronym are not the important part of the acronym. What that acronym does, how it fits into this world of IT security, is the important part. And in reality, those of us that work in the field, we don't use the names. In fact, often we've forgotten what the names are. We'll just talk about, hey, I have on my report, I got this OID, and I'm trying to determine if this is something we should be concerned about. And other people go, oh yeah, I saw the OID that's in your report. We're just talking about the OID that we have in our report. Nobody ever says, what is the object identifier? We just never say that. In fact, I don't know that I would have remembered it at the time to say, oh, perchance, sir, what object identifier was brought to your attention in this scribe that you have provided to us? No, we don't. That's not something that happens. We just say, oh, send me the OID. I'll have a look. That's the important part. But you have to know what an OID is. You have to know it's all those little numbers that make up the MIB value associated with an SNMP query. That's an important thing to consider. So although these acronyms are there in the back, and most of them will be covered organically in your study materials, don't overstudy the acronyms. What you should be overstudying is everything else that's listed in these exam objectives from Domain 1 through Domain 5 of the SY0-701. So if you're ever trying to think, do we have to know this? Do we have to know that? Are we going to be asked a question on this thing? It's in this list. If it's not in the exam objectives, you don't need to know it for your exam. Generally speaking, broadly speaking, if you stick to the objectives and you know every single one of the bullets, you will pass this exam with no problem. Even if they ask you something that's outside the scope of this, those questions are so few and far between that it doesn't matter. It doesn't, because you know everything else. That's the point with this. So stick to the objectives. That is one of the best tools available to you, and it's free. It's available on the CompTIA website, professormesser.com/objectives. That will get you there. So make sure you are very familiar with all of those objectives and what they mean for this exam. So let's talk about the exam. Oh, I get to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is how do they grade this exam? So this question's from Christopher, who asks, hi, Professor, I've been watching for quite a while, and I know it's been covered before. Yes, it has. But has CompTIA ever stated an official weight to the performance-based questions? Well, you did the same thing I did, Christopher. I have heard 200 points before, but I've also heard of people passing that did not even complete the performance-based questions. And you're right. Nobody knows how much performance-based question is worth. Maybe the performance-based questions are worth almost nothing. Maybe they are. Maybe they're worth a lot. Maybe they're worth the same as a multiple choice question. But here's the thing. We will never know. That's sort of the harsh reality of most industry certification exams. You don't get access to understand how they graded it. And in fact, you don't know what questions you get right or what questions you get wrong. You will never see the questions again once you leave the room. And that's not just CompTIA. That's Microsoft. That's Cisco. That's Amazon. That's Red Hat. Just keep listing. Nobody gives you the list of questions when you're done. Kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? And nobody tells you how it's graded. Those Microsoft exams are weird. Cisco exams are weird. It's just a weird grading. There is something about grading of certification exams that I think companies want to keep proprietary. They want to keep it secret. So they don't share that information with anyone. So I have no idea. I have never heard anything from anyone that I've ever spoke with at CompTIA. And I've spoken with people up and down the line of management, people who are my direct representatives that I can talk to at CompTIA. We are a platinum CompTIA partner. So I talk to people at CompTIA quite a bit. I at least check in every month, and they give me latest information. So I'm always up to date on what's going on, but nobody ever talks about the grading. And I think within CompTIA, it is a very big secret. even the CompTIA employees, most of them, have no idea how the exam is graded by design. That's how it's supposed to work. So the question about performance-based questions, people feel that they should be worth a lot, but I feel that perhaps they are not. And I think it is going to depend on when you ask this question as well. For those of you that go back a number of years, let's just go back 3 years with the CompTIA exams, the performance-based questions have evolved over time. They started off relatively simplistic. Now they've gotten a little more difficult and a little more difficult and a little more difficult as time has gone on. But I don't know that that directly relates back to the grading, the number of points each question is worth. There have been, because I obviously have a lot of people coming through my site. Every month we have about 2.5 million videos that are viewed. So a lot of people are coming to our website and a lot of people are taking the exams, and I get to hear about their experiences taking the exam. So if this has happened to any of you, I'd love to get your feedback. There's very few things we can talk about on the exam. Practically nothing about the exam you can talk about because of the candidate agreement that you sign. But I'd like to know if you passed or if you failed, and I'd like to know if you even took the performance-based questions, if you even tried them. I have many examples of people who have contacted me and said, I took my exam, I skipped over the multiple choice questions at the beginning because you can do that. They read them and they just kept going, and they spent the bulk of their exam going through the multiple choice questions, answer A, B, C, or D, A, B, C, or D, A, B, C, or D, A, B, C, or D. And they went all the way through them. And when they circled back to the performance-based questions, time up. That's it. You can't, pencils down. There are no pencils, but pencils are down. You can't answer any more questions. Your time has expired, and they never got to go through any of the performance-based questions. And I think they had 4 or 5. And they passed. Their final score was a passing score. So those are very good examples of people that really did go through the entire exam and didn't answer any performance-based questions. So we can already start to, I don't want to reverse engineer because every exam is a little different. Every exam has a different combination of questions. Every exam has a random set of questions provided to you. So nobody's exam experience is ever going to be the same. So we can't say that if you did the same thing, it would be the same outcome because we simply don't know the answer to that. But in his particular case, he was able to go through all the multiple choice questions, effectively ignoring, not able to answer any of the performance-based questions, pass the exam. So there's certainly a conversation we can have about it. We can think about it. We could try to reverse engineer it. We can have a discussion, but ultimately, none of us know if we're right. And we will never know if we are right. And therein lies the problem, is that it's a mystery of the universe. You're just never, ever, ever going to know. CompTIA is not going to tell you. Nobody else knows. Therefore, we're just not going to have that happen. My recommendation to you and to everyone is that when you are taking your exam, just do the best you can. Try to make sure every question is answered with some type of answer. What we do know is that you are not penalized if you get a question wrong. They don't take points away from you if you get a question wrong. But if you don't get the question right, you don't get any points. So your only chance of getting points on this exam is to answer the question correctly. And the only way you can answer a question correctly is if you know the answer or if you guess. I'll take either one of those, quite honestly. So that is the idea. Just take a guess. Never leave a question blank before you submit that exam. If there's a few questions you just didn't know, Christmas tree. A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. Well, just whatever you think, or pick what you think the best possible answer might be. Give it an educated guess at what the answer might be. So that's the idea. Make sure you are familiar with that. But ultimately, we don't know how many points performance-based questions are. CompTIA is not telling us, and ultimately, it doesn't matter. Your focus should be on simply answering as many questions correct as possible. The final score is going to end up being the final score, whatever it happens to be. That's what that is. So hopefully that gives you some perspective of how you can focus on the exam. I think I even gave away some of my exam hacks right there. You got a couple right there in that possible answer. Let's keep going through the list of things. We have in our practice exams, some folks were asking about our practice exams book earlier. There it is, right side up. Practice exams book does have performance-based questions. There are 5 performance-based questions in our practice exams book for each one of these. So you want a firewall performance-based question? There it is. You've got there's more in that particular first set of questions. So I try to put performance-based questions in here that are going to give you an idea of things that might help you on the exam. They are absolutely available to you. And if you have our practice exams, you've seen these. You know about these. They'll really be able to help you as you go through this list. We've got some time for more questions. I have a hard stop at the top of the hour, but we had some time. Let's sift through others that are in this list and see what questions you might have. This is here. We talked a little bit about continuing education and renewing our certifications at the beginning of the after show. We were talking about where you can get these CEUs. This is a little bit of a different question from Trenton, who asks, I'm trying to understand the best time to start getting continuing education credits for the Security Plus renewal. Is it possible to begin earning these credits right away? Or should I wait until closer to the renewal date, maybe a year or so? I want to make sure I start the process at the correct time. Here's the way some people do this. They will pass their exam, and then they will immediately begin collecting CEUs. Some people can collect CEUs very quickly. You can't earn a CEU until you are certified. So if you took a college course, then you took your exam, you can't use your college course for CEUs. But if you took the exam, then you took the college course, that's valid for CEUs. Just so you're aware of the time frames associated with that. The question here is, when should you start? You should start immediately. You should start doing that right away and making that happen. So some people will get their certification, and then they will immediately collect all the CEUs they need and submit them as soon as possible, and they will have 3 years added on to their renewal period. So there you're getting it out of the way very quickly. You thought when you passed the exam you'd have 3 years before this expired. You've just now pushed it to 6 years because you renewed it as fast as possible. Doesn't work that way with every renewal type, however. For example, let's say that you earned your A+ certification and you're going to renew it by taking your Network Plus certification. When you take the Network Plus certification, when you take that Network Plus exam and you pass the exam, your new start date for your A+ and Network Plus is now synchronized to be on the same day. So if you took the A+ exam, that's good for 3 years. But what if the next week you took the Network Plus and passed it? Well, you just sort of added a week to your A+ renewal. Now you've got 3 years from that point. That wasn't very useful, I guess, from extending it out. But that's the way it works if you're taking a higher level certification exam and figuring out the details of that. So another thing to consider when you're going through the list of this and the things that are important to know about it. So renewing, there's a lot of different ways to renew, as I mentioned earlier. Make sure you might even want to watch the video that I have on how to renew in just a few hours, because I do talk about that, but I go through renewing by taking a higher level CompTIA cert, renewing by taking a third-party certification, renewing by collecting CEUs, renewing by taking CertMaster CE. What are the advantages and disadvantages of those 4 methods? They're in the video. So I break it down for you so you know exactly what those differences are and how you might work through them. So hopefully that gives you at least some perspective, Trenton, when you're trying to figure out what are the best things we can work through. What are the best things I can do to help with my renewal, and what are the time frames like? Each one of them is a little bit different. Other questions. This is not a bad question. It sort of fits. A lot of people want to know, when should I take my exam? When am I really going to be ready? Well, on my practice exams book, I do kind of give you some feedback into that. This is from Shamika, who asks, what scores on your practice exams is best to determine that I might be ready to take the test? So practice exams are an interesting thing. I like practice exams, and I focus on making practice exams that I try to make best fit the most accurate description of what you would find on the exam. Now you would think that would be sort of normal. Well, of course you're going to make practice exams that seem to be similar to what you would get on the actual exam. But actually, it's not what I found online. I found a lot of practice exams out there that have very outdated information. They're bringing up topics that are listed on exam objectives that were the last version, or even the version before that. They're 6 years old with the questions they're asking or more. That's unusual, I find. But for some reason, I see people describing those questions as more difficult. They're not more difficult. They're just wrong. They're completely out of context. They're not helping you. If somebody is asking you a question about a topic that's not on the exam, that's not a harder question. That's irrelevant. That is one that you should not be going through. So on my practice exams, every question is guaranteed to be about topics that could potentially end up on your exam. I don't think there's any other practice exam out there that can say that from what I have seen. I'd love to see one that is as accurate as ours are. Back to your question, though, you talked about how do I know if I'm really ready? Well, in our practice exams book, there is the very first section is how to use this book. And I give you a breakdown of how many questions I think might be pretty good to be able to understand that. So if you get less than 63 questions correct, that's a 70% or lower. I know the exam doesn't work on percentages, but we don't know how the exam calculates anything, so I'm using percentages because we do know how to calculate that. 70% and lower, not ready. Not ready to take the exam. And then I give you different categories. How about 70 to 80%? Getting there. 80 to 90%, you could possibly make a run at that. I'm not completely sure that's a good place to go. But if you get over 90%, yeah, you're ready to go with this exam. Somewhere close to 90%, I think, is going to be a pretty good measurement. And you'll probably be able to tell if that's the right number or not. Those values that scoring chart is in the front of my Security Plus Practice Exams book. So that's on the introduction page, something. It's just right in the front. And I go through the different categories right there in the very first part of the book, so that you can go back and reference them, maybe give you an idea of what makes sense for your studies. I think that's always a challenge when you're trying to find the right study method. And then, do I really know what I need to know? Go back to the exam objectives. It'll tell you if you have everything you need to know. It's very good at pointing that out for you. You'll go through the objectives and you'll find a line and think, what is that? Where did that? I don't remember seeing or reading anything about that. Then you can go back to our videos, because I do cover every topic from the exam objectives in our videos. In fact, I use the exam objectives as my list when I am making the video. That's how directly related those things are. And that's because the exam comes directly from those exam objectives. So I can't think of anything more valuable to have than something that is directly related to that list. And it also helps you find the things. If you run across something in the list you don't know, let's do this. Let's go to, if you go to section 4.3 in the exam objectives, explain various activities associated with vulnerability management. And it has things in here about vulnerability scans and application security and static analysis and dynamic analysis and package monitoring. That's in section 4.3 of this practice exam. Well, now all you have to do is pop open your browser, go out to the professormesser.com website, and go to our Security Plus video section. Let's have a look at the Security Plus videos. There's our voucher page. And so where was I at? Was I on 4.3? So we can go down in these videos to section 4.3. There's 2.1, 2.2. Let's keep going. There's a lot of videos in this course. 4.3, vulnerability management. And you can start to see the breakdown of all of these different options. Was it 4.3 that I was in? Let's have a look at, what did I bring up? I had the objectives. Yeah, it was 4.3. And we were talking about vulnerability scans, application security, static analysis, dynamic analysis, and that type of thing. Well, here it is, vulnerability scanning. That was the first thing on that list. So this vulnerability scanning video is the one that goes through a number of those topics right at the beginning. I try to group these topics together so you can find them easily. And I don't have the audio on for this, so you're not going to hear it. But here you have things like the vulnerability scanning process. You've got, I even show you some vulnerability scans that I ran on my network. There's the static testing that is listed in the exam objectives. And notice we're using the acronyms that you would expect to see in that particular area. So you can learn those acronyms as you go. What's another topic that's in here? We've got some fuzzing that we're doing here. So that's Fuzzy the bear. He's, I guess, I don't know. It's fuzzing options. I even show some fuzzing in real time there. And that's the video. So that's section 4.3. So of course, not only do we have the video on our website, we have the entire text. A transcript of the video is also listed right after it as well. That is there on that website. That might give you a place to go to learn more about those pieces. But I think that would give you at least somewhere to cross-reference the information for the things you don't happen to know. So again, those exam objectives are sort of your gateway to knowing, am I ready or not? And if I'm not, where do I go to get ready? Kind of points you in that direction so you can find everything you're looking for. There is a huge emphasis, and I see this, there's not any one question I want to bring up about this, but I'm seeing multiple questions about this, which really deals with performance-based questions. CompTIA, when they write their exams, most of the exam is multiple choice questions. And I think we have a comfort level with multiple choice because we know exactly what to expect. There's a question, there are a series of options we can choose, and we choose one of those options to answer the question. Sometimes two or more answers to answer the question, and that's it. We know exactly the structure, we know the style, we know what's expected of us, and so we don't ever worry about multiple choice questions. Nobody ever sends me an email that says, I'm really worried about what to expect on multiple choice. Nobody ever says that. But what everybody says is, I never know what to expect on performance-based questions. And my answer to you always is, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how they ask the question. If you know the exam objectives, you will be able to answer the question. That's it. Because a performance-based question can be anything. They can make a question look and feel like anything. So it's almost impossible to give you a list of here's what you could expect to see on the exam without in some way violating the terms of the exam agreement itself. So I would recommend that you have a look at our previous study groups. So if you go back to the last year of study groups and you look at that very first new performance-based question of the month that we have every month, you've got 12 examples there that are, each one is a little bit different. There's matching questions, there's fill in the blank. The one we had today, you had to look at a chart and figure out how the firewall rules worked. On other exams, we have other topics. So we try to mix that up a little bit so that you can feel that the variability that could possibly be asked of you during the exam. My recommendation to all of you is don't worry about how they're asking the question. You should be worrying about, do I know the answer? Sort of makes sense, I guess, when you put it in that type of context. People tend to focus or want to memorize performance-based questions. You can't do that because they could ask any question in any style, in any format, in any way. You can't prepare for a performance-based question except knowing the exam objectives. I always go back to that. So I don't want to drive that home, and you're just going to be tired of me hearing, have you downloaded the objectives? Have you read through the objectives? Have you used that as your checklist? You should do all of those things, but I don't want to overdo it. You'll think maybe I'm just constantly saying this over and over again for no good reason. I'm saying it over and over again for a very good reason. And that's where everything begins and everything ends on this exam. It is such a key document that everything is based on that. It is the constitution of our exam. So knowing it very, very well will position you very, very well for success. Let's keep going through the questions that you have submitted. We have a little bit of time left. Let's keep going through this list. Some great questions here, by the way. Thank you so much for sending these in. This is a good question. I'm only putting this up here to show how out of scope Dylan is. Dylan Reams, we're calling him out in the chat room. Dylan says, Messer, can I borrow your Lamborghini? I'm sure it might be here. It's about this big. It has 4 little wheels on it, and I kind of push it along my desk. That's it. That's the only Lamborghini I got, brother. There's no Lamborghini. I'm not sure where you got that idea from, but there's no Lamborghini in my garage. Sorry about that. So no such luck in that case. But if I had one, I can tell you now, Dylan, no, you may not borrow it. Just so we're clear. Just so we know. We'll keep going with this. Next question on our list. Kind of like getting off the scope of those sometimes, figuring out the details. Next on our list, for my performance-based question exams, a lot of people are asking, are there performance-based questions in here? You've already seen there are, so we can skip over a number of those. But absolutely, why would I not give you performance-based questions? They're pretty good in having that there. Let's keep going through this list. A lot of great stuff here, but some that don't actually fit into the questions or the things that we are covering here today. So, and a lot of questions, some of you are getting kind of cheeky too. We're not bringing those questions up either. You can submit them, but I'm just going to kind of scroll right past them and be able to know what those are. So let's talk about where you go, what you do, and how you choose what certifications you get. This is an important consideration. You have a wealth of certifications in our industry to choose from. Do you just do CompTIA? Do you do something else? Here's the question from Seth that asks, I passed my Network Plus after you said I would during last week's study group. Well, good. Thanks. See, Seth has followed up with us. Thank you, Seth, for the follow-up. I think we were talking about, if I recall, there was something about the scores you were getting or something associated with that. And I'm like, well, if you know that, you're good. You're going to go take it. You're going to crush it. So congratulations on passing your Network Plus exam first and foremost. Seth continues, I plan on passing the Security Plus next Friday. What are you drinking, man? What is in the water that you're going through this so quickly? We would like to know your secret for getting these done so fast. The average time to take one of these exams is about 2 to 3 months. So when somebody's able to get that much done in such a short period of time, I got to know your secret. So a lot of people come into these exams though with pre-existing knowledge, and they can get through it in about a week. I think for most of us, it's more than just monster drinks, right? You need some time to really go through the information. I need months of time when I go through one of these. Seth says, after that, I plan on getting the first AWS Cloud Cert and Cisco Ethical Hacker. I'd like to hear your thoughts on a path after Security Plus, and if you would consider making courses for certs like CySa or Linux. CySa Plus and Linux Plus. Those are CompTIA exams. The Cybersecurity System Administrator exam from CompTIA and the Linux Plus from CompTIA are those two. So let's kind of break this up a little bit. Seth mentioned you got Network Plus, you're going to close Security Plus next Friday, and then move to AWS and Cisco. So this is the part where people often ask, so what do I do next? What certification really is where I go? Seth, you sort of have an idea of what you want to do or what interests you, and it sounds like some of these cloud certs and Cisco certs are right up your alley. I would temper that just a bit. First, I don't want to temper your enthusiasm at all. Keep doing that. If you want to grab these certs, go get them. You will learn a lot during the process. And I'm sure if you look back at Network Plus and you look forward at Security Plus, you are learning a lot as you go through these certifications. We often gloss over that point, but it's a fantastic amount of knowledge we get out of these certifications when we do one of these. The question then becomes, am I getting the right cert? And everybody is going to have a different answer to that based usually on where they are physically, like geographically. And I mention this because if you go to look at job openings in Washington, D.C., maybe you should even try this. Go to your favorite job listing website, whichever ones, go to the Indeeds and LinkedIn Jobs and Dice.coms of the world. Find the one that you like the most, go to that site and put it on Washington, D.C., and look at entry-level jobs in IT. Maybe just entry-level help desk or entry-level system administrator or entry-level workstation administration, entry-level Windows administrator, and look at what the certifications are that they would like you to have. I would argue, I would bet, I would guess that the jobs in the Washington, D.C. area will have a higher percentage of Security Plus and other related certs in that area associated with it than similar jobs you might find in Minneapolis, than similar jobs you might find in Dallas, than similar jobs you might find in Seattle, in LA, in Chicago, because the U.S. federal government has more of an emphasis on Security Plus and related security certifications. So if you look at a different part of the country, there will be a different set of certifications that that particular geographical area focuses on. On top of that, individual companies might have a different focus. So if a company is in the world of cybersecurity, they might have more of a focus on you having a cybersecurity certification. If they're a company that makes widgets, they might be asking for A+. They might be asking for AWS. They might be asking for a Cisco cert. They might be asking for an Azure cert. So you never know what it might be. If there is a video in this YouTube video description on how to get a job in IT with no experience. And it's a 30-minute video, but as many of you know who have watched my videos, there's not a lot of empty space in that video. It is topic after topic after topic after topic. And I describe in that video a process of putting all of these details into a spreadsheet, maybe finding 10 to 20 jobs that are posted in your area and document them out, just so that you can take a step back after you've done all the hard work to see, are there any trends? Is everyone asking for Network Plus? Is everyone asking for A+? Is nobody asking for Security Plus? Does everybody want you to have AWS? There's different questions to ask about that, but you're not going to know until you compile the data. So there's a little legwork involved. There's a little bit you have to do. I'm giving you some homework to be able to go back and work on that. Fortunately, it's not hard work to do. You simply need to find out what formal degree are they looking for? What industry certifications would they like us to have? What other knowledge outside the scope of a formal education or industry certification would they like us to have? What things are important for them in this job posting? What things do they mention? So list all of those out and do that for every possible job in your area that you feel you would be qualified for. You may be surprised over the results. You might find that one particular certification keeps coming up over and over and over again, and it might not be a cert that you even thought you should go after. But after compiling the data, you may realize, wow, everybody in town wants me to have that cert. I better go get that certification. Sometimes we need to get that cert just as that checkbox, even if it's something we didn't necessarily think that we would have done on our own. And I will tell you, this has happened to me as well in this industry. I probably have taken 25 or 30 industry certification exams through the years, maybe even more than that. I'm thinking about it. Every single one of them brought something to the table for me. It taught me something I didn't know. It gave me a view into that technology that I didn't previously have. And one nice part about it is a lot of these you stick with you through the years. For example, very early on in my career, I got my Microsoft MCSE. This was the highest level certification from Microsoft at the time. It required you to take and pass 6 different certification exams, and they ranged from the Windows operating system, Windows Server, and other technologies associated with implementing Windows in an enterprise. And I thought going into this, I was working at a a large technology company in Silicon Valley at the time in California. And I was a remote person. I worked in the Southeast United States, but my headquarters was in California. So I traveled mostly around the Southeast US, but they wanted us to go get a cert. And at the beginning of the year, I said, okay, I'm going to go get the MCSE. And they said, great. If you get the MCSE, we can check off that, yep, you did what you said you were going to do this year. Many of you are probably familiar with the story. So you set a bunch of things that you say you're going to do throughout the year, and then you go do that. And then they evaluate how you did. And I went and got my MCSE, and I did it sort of as a throwaway. I had to put something down. Let's get a Microsoft cert. Sure, we'll do that. Not really understanding what I was getting into and not understanding what was involved with the individual topics associated with this. I just thought, it's Windows. How hard can it be, right? How little did I know about the Windows operating system, Active Directory, Windows Server, and all of the technologies that surround all of that. So that gave me sort of a heads up that there was a lot more to the underside of Windows than I'd realized. And I started learning all about Active Directory, networking in Windows, security in Windows, troubleshooting things in Windows that normally you wouldn't run across. All of those topics are still valid today, even though they're associated with a Windows version from many years ago. So I think that if you're someone who is going into these certification exams thinking, this is just a one-off, I'm never going to use this again, you will probably be surprised. Some of these topics you will continue to use and continue to grow with throughout your entire IT career. And that's just something that is a value that we don't think about with these certs. Here's an example. I got very early on in my career, I got a CNX certification. Never heard of that one, right? Doesn't exist anymore. It was called the Certified Network Expert, and it focused on network technologies. So understanding Ethernet. Kind of a neat thing, really. We don't have certifications like that any longer that just focus on one single technology topic, and you have to be an expert in that topic. It was a hard certification. It was considered to be one of the hardest certifications you could get, especially for network professionals. And there was Ethernet, token ring, FIDI, ATM, and network cabling. I think there were some others they added on after that, but as you can tell in that list, of those 5 I just mentioned, only 2 of these things are even applicable these days. We don't do FIDI anymore. We don't do token ring anymore. We don't do ATM anymore. So, but the underlying technology with that, the cell-based technologies, the optical aspect of SONET and ATM is still being used today. And some of the technologies associated with the fiber still in use today. Things that you would do with FDDI, things you would do with token ring. These are all technologies that we don't use, but there's still a lot of good information in there that apply towards the technologies that we are using today. So even if it is something kind of off the beaten path that you're doing, keep in mind that you're still going to be able to pull from that from the rest of your career. These technologies are all overlapped with each other in many, many ways. So I think that's what you should do, is have a look at what employers in your area would like you to have, then go get those. And sometimes that matches what you would like to do. Sometimes it does not match what you would like to do. You will have to make the decision on whether that's something that you want to invest your time and your effort into, and your money. There's always that. So have a look at and ideas of what you would focus on. I think that's good to know. Other questions. Let's keep going. This is one I'm going to put up just because I want to give a shout out to Timothy, who says, hello, Professor Messer. God bless you richly. On May 1st, 2025, I passed my Security Plus. Your training video was my main study material. Your practice exam set helped me very much. It was really close to the actual exam. Again, thanks and stay blessed. This is some of the best messages I get during the day are these kind of messages. For those of you that have sent me emails that have said, I passed it today, thank you for whatever it was I did. Quite honestly, I always think that I'm not really the one that should get the thanks. I'm not the one that took the exam. I'm not the one that spent the hours learning this content. I'm not the one that had to sit there in that room and sweat as I answered the questions on that exam. You're the one that did. So congratulations. I'm glad to have just that tiny little part and being a little bit in that process you had for making that happen. Getting these certification exams are, for some reason, often dismissed online. And I think probably because there are a lot of people who don't have these certification exams and they would like them, and they just don't have either the time or effort or gumption to go get them. They're not going through the process of learning and continually learning in our industry. And as you know, being able to understand these topics and be able to pass these certifications, they help you with your career. They help you get a job. They help you get a better job, but they also give you a personal knowledge. And I would say give you a reason for learning the next one. Having a way to better yourself in this industry can be very valuable, not just to your career, but your own self-worth. And that's worth a lot. It's no good working somewhere and feeling bad about what you are doing. We have all had those jobs. Many of us have had those jobs. I have certainly been working places where I was not happy with what I was doing, not happy with the work that I had to do, and I got out. I found something else. I moved and I pivoted out to a different thing. The only way you're going to have those options, though, is if you earn those certifications. You need the credentials. That's what's going to give you the options. Many people think of the ultimate destination with all of this is how much money you make every year. I think in reality, what you are provided with when you earn these certifications, you get knowledge, and the knowledge gives you options. There is no better feeling when you are going through your day-to-day, when you're working with folks, when there's a big project going on, when you're trying to determine what to do with your life. One of the best things you can have is options. And without some type of plan, some strategy, a set of certifications, a plan to get more knowledge, a plan to do this project, a plan to move into that particular position, if you don't have those goals and objectives, you're not going to have anything that you can do for yourself. You're going to be stuck in that position. You're not going to be happy with what you're doing. But that, I think, is one of the benefits of IT. I think it's one of the huge benefits of IT that we often just gloss over, is that IT itself, information technology, is a huge, huge market. And there's so many different things you can do. You can focus on Windows operating system, Linux operating system, Mac OS operating system. You can focus on data centers, databases, email, the cloud, data centers. Maybe you're interested in security. Maybe you'd like to do more with networking. Maybe you want to focus on routing. All of these are very different parts of IT, and all of them are accessible to you. Not any one of those is blocked off to you because you are in IT. You're getting a job in information technology. It's really up to you as to what direction you'd like to go. And although often the boat that we are in our career sometimes feels that it is on a track that is just taking us a certain direction, occasionally you're able to lean into that boat a little bit and push it one direction or another. Sometimes a new boat just pulls up right next to you. Surprisingly, whoa, where'd that boat come from? Somebody's on board saying, get on, we're going, let's go. And you hop on, they hit the gas and you're heading down the river. You just never know, but you have to be ready. If that boat shows up, are you ready to make the jump? And you can't do that unless you do the legwork now. Nothing in this industry comes for free. Nothing comes easily. You have to work to get the knowledge. The knowledge gives you the options, and the option gives you opportunity. And unless you focus on knowing the technologies, getting your certifications, making the relationships in the industry, understanding what options are available to you, and putting yourself out there, you're not going to be in a position where you can make that jump and get in that bigger boat. So just something I think I want to leave with you before we finish up today. This is an exciting field. This is why I do it, because I've been down that river. I've been in that boat. I've made the jump to the bigger boats, and I've watched what happens. The opportunity is there. You just have to be prepared to take it. And what better way to prepare than to start working on the fundamentals now? You know, if you're going to have a workout partner, I'll be your workout partner. We're going to work through it so that when you really have to lift that heavy weight, you're going to be ready to do it. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We really enjoy doing these live streams, and having these questions and answers and things we can go through is fun. Getting the questions from you in the second hour is also a lot of fun. So thank you so much for doing that as well. We do one of these every month. If you want to know when the next live event is going to be, you can check our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. Next week is our bye week, so we don't have any live events next week, but the top of the month next week, we will start them all over again. You can always find out what's going on at professormesser.com/calendar or from the events channel inside of our Discord. That's where I'm going after this, is our Discord. You might want to join me over there at professormesser.com/Discord. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to see all of you. We appreciate you joining us, and thanks so much. We will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Thanks so much, everyone.